Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham, joined by Rod Mullins here on this Monday. We always talk NASCAR after the big weekend of racing. And this weekend it was in Phoenix, and very similar to last week, Rod, with an overtime finish, pretty much a similar cast of characters, if not the same cast of characters, and a rather similar finish. Take us into what happened.
Well, you can't say enough. William Byron picked up his second win in a row. He picked up a big finish for Hendrick Motorsports. But the thing is, I guess the way that the race ended and so forth, Kyle Larson wasn't too happy about it because it was one of those restarts he wished he could have just, gone back and redone again because, he was in that situation again like he was last week. And, I think I called it. I was sitting here last week and I was talking to you about it. And I think you asked me who might be a potential at winning this race. And one of the first names that jumped out at me was Kevin Harvick. And Kevin Harvick had a chance right there. Before it was over with, Kevin Harvick was in the thick of things, but then I think 2 laps to go, maybe 3 laps to go there in that overtime period. He got squeezed out. He couldn't go, and he couldn't go any further. And so he got pretty much hung out to dry. And so it ended up, it was a William Byron finish with Kyle Larson in there, but Kyle Larson was not happy with the result. He said, quote, to kind of end all quotes, he said, "Yeah, I'm pretty pissed off." That's what he said after the whole thing was over with. But, this was probably a good thing considering what Hendrick Motorsports is under right now. A lot of people didn't know about this, heard about it on Saturday. I think it was Saturday or early Sunday, that NASCAR confiscated the radiator flaps or the flaps that's on top of the hood for the cars. They didn't do just only Hendrick Motorsports, but they also did Colleague Racing, and they've got them. And Hendrick right now, according to a lot of people, Hendrick Motorsports is kind of shaking right now, wondering what's going to be wrong or what are they going to call them on and stuff in regard to the parts. So, this victory might be an empty one if they still hold up and they say, okay, William Byron, you're still the winner out of this, which I'm sure they're not going to take it away from him at this point. But Hendrick Motorsports could get, if they were using something that was illegal, according to NASCAR, they could be penalized heavily out of it.
Yeah, some intrigue there, no doubt. And what I've seen is that penalties could be announced this week. Other cars as well, like you said, were looked at. One other thing that was interesting about this race, the behind the scenes stuff. It was warm on Sunday, but it wasn't warm when the teams were out there in practice on Friday and then qualifying on Saturday. So that throws a wild card into the preparations. And you prep for what you've done on the track and the weather you're in, and then all of a sudden it's 80 degrees.
Right.
That's tough for those teams.
Yeah, it is tough for those teams. And then they were also testing a new short track aero package this week too. They were checking it out to see if it was going to work. A lot of the teams were hoping it would provide them with a little bit more downforce, and I think a lot of them came away satisfied that it did. But, at the same time, like you said, you start prepping. It was cool on Friday. They have testing. They have a little bit of some runarounds the track, and then they also qualify. And then the temperature changes dramatically, sort of like what happened at the NHRA Nationals, the Amalie Oil Nationals down in Gainesville this past weekend. The temperature, they'd had rain, temperature changed, and then these tires were just not gripping the way that they should have been, because when the track's hot, it provides a little bit of more loose kind of driving is what it does. And that's what it did on Sunday at Phoenix. Eric Almirola, I know he had bad luck. I know that you had a couple other drivers slam the wall. AJ Allmendinger was another one that slammed the wall. Some of these cautions, the way it worked out, it was just, trying to adjust and keep that car going. At least if it was getting tight or getting loose, they hoped to tighten it back up, give it a little bit more downforce. But then as the car went on, they would go and probably it would loosen up a little bit more. They'd have to tighten it back up again to keep it that way, or at least come to a happy medium somewhere in between.
You were talking about Kevin Harvick. He had to lead late. Took the lead with 44 laps to go. But then it was a strategy thing that changed the race, at least from as far as he was concerned. A yellow flag, you mentioned, I think it was 10 laps to go. And most of their drivers, when they went to the pits, got 2 tires. His team decided to go for 4 tires. And that little change there was what pushed Harvick back in the pack and kept him from being competitive at the end.
Well, he said that's what he would have done in that kind of situation. He would have gone for the 4 tires, and Rodney Childers called for the 4 tires. He said that, and he said, he'd rather be on offense rather than being on the defensive side of it. He just didn't get a couple of cars that when that first caution came out, it kind of lost their chance to even contend for the win in that race. He still thought that they had a good chance to maybe wrap this race up there toward the end of it, but the cars, they kind of held him up a little bit more. They kind of held him up, and then they all got jammed up. But, he finished his 20th straight top 10 at Phoenix, which is a Cup Series record for a single track. He may not have won the race, but at least he's going out a winner in in this early race at Phoenix. He's hoping to just be there in the fall come championship time.
That's right. Hey, we talked about the winner, Byron, with his second straight win. Ryan Blaney in second, Tyler Reddick in third. Talk about the days they had.
Well, Ryan Blaney had a good day. Ross Chastain was in there as well. Kyle Busch was running there. They opted for 2 tires out of this whole thing, Denny Hamlin. But, you really can't say enough about the rebound. And I think I was talking about this last week. I had not been impressed with Tyler Reddick, and Tyler Reddick goes and rebounds this time around. And, he ends up getting, a top 10, I think it's a top 10 finish is what he ended up getting. Third place run out of this top 5 finish for him at Phoenix. And, Chase Briscoe in the Ford, Stewart Haas Ford, he finished in 7th. But the big one I was really talking about last week was Tyler Reddick. He needed a good race to turn things around, and this was it. He's one of these Western drivers. They love these little shootouts on these little tracks like this, and Phoenix is just configured just in the right way for them to be able to go. And they pulled off I think they pulled off an exceptional finish on Sunday compared to what they had already in the first 2 or 3 races of the season.
Josh Berry filling in for Chase Elliott, finishing the top 10. He's obviously doing a great job down at the Xfinity level. 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, and 4 starts. But nice run around the track for him on Sunday.
Yeah, if they get to Atlanta, he may even get a top 5 finish, and he may even win the thing. Who knows how this thing will go? But he's quick to adapt, and that's one thing Dale Earnhardt Jr. has talked about so much with his driver Josh Berry. He says, give this boy a chance, and he's going to go places in the sport. And of course, he's given him a chance on the Xfinity side, and he's already proven some things for him there. But here we are in the Cup Series, and I'm sure he got elevated to the Cup Series a little bit faster than what he anticipated. And, we've all been kind of waiting. Is Junior Motorsports going to come out, and are they going to decide to run a Cup Series, race, or at least run Cup Series in the next couple of years? This year, a lot of people were expecting them to make the announcement and say that they were doing so. We've got to wait probably about another year or 2 to see where they're going to go. Josh Berry, in the meantime, is getting his chance at wetting his chops at this first time of running a Cup Series, or at least running this Cup Series car now for Hendrick Motorsports. I think it's a great experience for him. I think he's going to come away maybe another top 10 finish this coming week, because, that car always, when they bring that car, that especially Chase Elliott's car, to Atlanta, he always does well. But, you got a different driver this time around. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, what the outcome is. But, yeah, he's definitely turned some heads already in his second race. And he's still got, 4 or 5 more weeks to go, minus one of those. He won't be driving at Circuit of the Americas, but he'll still be driving at Atlanta and a couple of the other tracks. And then they've got another driver coming in at the Circuit of the Americas, a road course driver that'll be subbing in for him. But I'd like to see him in a chance at a road course and see what he could really do. I think he's an all-around great driver.
You mentioned Atlanta. That's where we're heading this weekend, Sunday at 3:00, Atlanta Motor Speedway. So back on the East Coast, at least for the week, heading back out to Texas, then coming back east for Richmond in April. What do we look for with the Atlanta race?
Well, we will probably see a lot of close racing at Atlanta. They put the new surface down, and last year was the first time that a lot of people got to, I guess, experience the new Atlanta, so to speak. And it really, the drivers really love the new setup and the new banking, the new pavement. They loved all of that stuff. You had some drivers that were contenders there toward the end of the race last year in Atlanta, and Chase Elliott was one of those. You figure him to go down there, but like I said, Josh Berry is going to be in his place. I would probably put, in this case, looking at Atlanta, Kyle Busch maybe coming away with something. He's already got one win on the season. He liked Atlanta a whole lot here when they made the changes to it, because Atlanta was so previously, as it was stated, they were so worn out. The track was just worn out in places, patched in places, and now they've got this new pavement all the way around. They've had it for about a year. It's seasoned, it's cured. So now we'll see what kind of racing actually hits the track down at Atlanta this coming weekend, and it could be another side-by-side racing test for a lot of these teams. But I really wouldn't rule out Kevin Harvick at this point either. Kevin Harvick won his first NASCAR Cup race, and he won it in a Hendrick, or not a Hendrick, but rather in a Richard Childress car. And that was right after Dale Earnhardt had passed away back at Daytona. And he was named as the guy to pick the ride and drive in that car. So Kevin Harvick likes Atlanta. I think Atlanta's been good to him. So we'll see how he does this week. Only question is now, where are we going to see some of the Toyotas again? Some of the Toyotas are again being quiet again. We've not heard some things out of them except for Tyler Reddick this past weekend. So what kind of track is it going to be? It remains to be seen. Is it going to be a Ford or Chevy dominated track this time around, or is it going to be a Toyota dominated track? We'll have to wait and see to Sunday.
This is a NASCAR podcast, but it's also the opening week of March Madness. Rod, have you looked at brackets yet? You got any thoughts on how things are going to go?
Oh, well, yeah. I'm just, right now, I looked at that one bracket that Virginia's in, and of course they're playing an early game, but some of these guys I was a little bit shocked with getting into this dance and so forth, and some that got ignored out of it. I think you'd even put an article up there too about Clemson. Yeah. That Clemson was one of these teams, and I kept on expecting, something about them going to be in there and stuff. I thought they had a decent season, but it didn't turn out that way. And then they're already predicting, I think in a couple of calls, Tennessee's going to go out early. They predict Tennessee will go out early because they've got the loss of that big man that they had about halfway through, or 3/4 of the way through the season. Tennessee could lose in the first round. I don't know about Virginia. It's just what team shows up. I'm kind of hesitant because, at one time I see a team that goes and can barely get by somebody they should beat handily by 20. And then I see a game like against Clemson the other night, and they handed them about 20 points at least by about 20. So I was a little bit shocked at that. And then I was shocked at the Duke game, because I thought, okay, these guys are going to play a lot more tighter than they did. They did play a tight game, but it seemed like Virginia just could not get their shooting game, their offensive thing, going in motion, I think, to kind of contend with Duke that entire time around. And so it remains to be seen what's going to happen, I guess, this coming March Madness.
I think a lot of teams are in a similar boat, that they could either lose the first game or go to the Final Four. I think that's this year. I don't know that there's a dominant team this year.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I really don't think so. And everybody's talking about, okay, well, this is the perfect time for Gonzaga. Gonzaga, they may have come into this thing. This is their 23rd, I think, 64-team field, what they've made it to March Madness. But, they always either get to either the Sweet 16 or they get down to the Elite Eight. Sometimes even get to the Final Four, and they've been stumped. They've never gotten over that hump to be able to win. So, I don't know. It's wide open, like you said. I was surprised by the mention of teams that came out of nowhere that I really wasn't expecting. Drake is one of them they're talking about. Drake is one of those teams. And Kentucky could have some trouble, major league trouble, with Providence, because one of Kentucky's players transferred to Providence, and now he's starting at Providence, and they're led by a former Kentucky player. And then here, he played basketball with these guys that's on the team. It's anybody's guess right now, I think, at this point. I'm just really surprised at the number of teams, and a lot of chances for a lot of these teams to really knock some people off early on, and we could see how far some of these, I call them mid-majors, may go before it's over with.
Yeah. For me, I get to go to Orlando. It's warm there. It's cold here in Virginia. So, I mean, we drove back yesterday from Greensboro. It was snowing the whole way.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
I'm heading to Orlando on Wednesday. It's 80 degrees there when I get there. So I won't know what to do as far as that goes. Then there's basketball. Hey, I'm hoping Virginia, if they get through the first 2 rounds, which there's, you got to win the games. But if they get through the first 2 rounds, they may have a date with Alabama in the Sweet 16 in Louisville. So, you start looking down the line at potential matchups. There could be some fun ones if things hold. That could be interesting.
Yeah, no doubt about that. There could be some fun ones. And, I'm kind of like, somebody will probably ask me, I'm on break this week, and then somebody will probably ask me tomorrow when I go back to school, hey, you going to do the March Madness bracket thing and stuff? And I'm going to say, no. I gave that up a long time ago because
I actually did too.
The bracket busters, I look at those, and some people say, oh, I'm going to go with, this team and so forth. But I think it was at least 5 or 6 years ago, I did one, and I had some bracket busters out of it, and the bracket busters busted me before it was over with because they didn't end up winning in the first round like they were supposed to. And then they ended up doing more damage in the second round, I think, than they did in the first round. And wow, I'm just, there's some of them that just, some of them I still kind of scratch my head. It's like it's for everybody now. It's not just for your big conferences like your Big Ten, but it gives even the little guy that chance to be able to breathe. Furman, for example, Furman is going to their first, in 40 some years, I think it's what they're going to their first March Madness. And it's just unreal. Some of these teams you wouldn't think could play out of their region, but buddy, when it comes down to March, they play above their heads, and some of them do really well when it comes down to it.
As far as the brackets go, it's going to sound funny when I say it. It's going to sound like I'm coming off like a real smart guy, but I'll cover basketball for a part of my living, and I know so much about basketball. The more you know, the more you realize that you don't know.
So, you can make those calls. Yeah,
I can tell you what happened, but telling you what's going to happen is really hard. And I'm smart enough to know that I'm just don't even try to tell you.
Well, and you could look back at this one too, and you could probably say the same thing. Did you expect a UMBC to go and up in Virginia like it did here several years ago?
Oh, certainly not. And that's the one that makes every game now on the schedule, from the 1 versus 16 all the way down. Every game now you have to say, hey, anybody can win that game.
Anybody could do it. And that's where it's kind of, I still get jittery when the announcement is made, who Virginia is going to be up against. And then this time around, who are they up against in the first round? Playing at 12:40 on
Furman. The Furman team you mentioned, the SoCon champs.
Okay. Yeah. And Furman scares me because Furman, in the Southern Conference, they quietly did their job. Everybody else was worrying about, the UT Chattanoogas and, the Western Carolinas, and, I think Mercer was thrown into there as well and stuff. But then here they come out of nowhere, they win this thing. And I mean, they sound like they're a solid team up and down. And I know they're jumping for joy. They were jumping for joy yesterday during the selection broadcast. And a lot of these teams were. The only thing I've got to give you credit on, and I have to say this, I don't think I could have done it, but Clark Kellogg butchered Texas Christian University yesterday and their mascot. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't hear about that. No.
Everybody knows Texas Christian as the Horned Frogs.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he called them the Frog Horns.
And I missed that completely.
And they were like, I saw this on, I think, awful announcing or something.
Yeah.
On there. And they put it on there and they said, Clark Kellogg definitely not going to get any positive marks for his recognizing Texas Christian as the Frog Horns.
Yeah, is he thinking about the Bugs Bunny cartoons, the Foghorn Leghorn, maybe?
Yeah,
from way back in the day.
Well, and then the other one too that they were talking about that Greg Gumbel, Bryant Gumbel's brother, made mention of was the guy that with Alabama and the supposed, the thing about the murder thing and so forth, and he still played, but then it was quickly kind of.
I did hear that part. Yes.
Yeah. They quickly, it was like, let's go on to something else with it. So, but
they got through that as quickly as they could. Indeed. That's kind of why I would love to see, I want to see Virginia get all the way as far as they can anyway, but given that Alabama's in the bracket, I'd kind of like to see Virginia play Alabama for, that reason. I think there's a lot of people who want to see Alabama knocked out as early as possible. Maybe they won't even get to Sweet 16. Who knows? But and also just the style matchup. Alabama's a run and gun team, and run and gun teams can have a hard time against a team like Virginia that slows you down.
Well, we're hearing things back this way and stuff of a potential. What's a team that made the big dance and stuff? Houston, and UVA played Houston this past year. We're hearing some rumors down this way and stuff that East Tennessee State University is looking at an assistant on Houston's basketball team, and he's had some close ties with I guess the AD that's at East Tennessee State right now. Of course, they fired their coach this past week, Desmond Oliver, and he had produced 2 lackluster seasons, actually depressing seasons as far as I was concerned, from a team that at one point in the early 90s, I can remember back 31 or 32 years ago, rushing back home to see where East Tennessee State was going to fall in the bracket and where they were going to play at. And then later on, I think another year after that, or a couple of years after that, they beat Arizona and Lute Olson in the first round. And people were just shocked out of that completely, that, little East Tennessee State beat this team. And, they've not had some good years here in quite a while. So they're looking at one of the assistants. I'm trying to remember the coach at Houston. I think it's his son.
Kelvin Sampson is the head coach there. Yeah.
So I think it's his son is who they're looking at possibly giving him a chance at East Tennessee State, but that's still all up in the air right now. I'm sure that down this way, they'll be making their trip to either the tournament or, the final part of the tournament when it's going to be played. And the AD there is going to be looking for, head coaching candidates, or at least potential for head coaching candidates.
Oh yeah. All the ADs in college basketball head to the Final Four. That's a job market as much as it is a couple basketball games.
Yep. Well, and Chris Beard, I heard today, Chris Beard's the new head coach now at Ole Miss, which kind of took me by surprise with that one. I really wasn't expecting it, but this is the same Chris Beard, I guess, that was coaching when Texas Tech and UVA was playing, wasn't it?
Yep, yeah. He is, and quick rehabilitation. He was fired after the allegations about domestic assault back in, I think it was January. He was fired. I think the domestic assault report was in December. And I thought he'd have to spend a couple of years at a mid-major rehabilitating his reputation and, winning some games. And he skipped that part. He just went to Ole Miss in the SEC. So good for him, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it is. And then I think that wasn't the charges dropped eventually. Weren't they
the fiance decided not to press. And then the prosecutor said, hey, without her testimony, I can't really do anything. But that doesn't mean that Texas was wrong necessarily to fire him. That, I guess if he's not charged and, not facing anything, it's also hard to keep him from being employed. Another job that was already filled too. Georgia Tech, which last week fired their coach, Josh Pastner, hired Damon Stoudemire, the former Portland Trailblazers guard, played at Arizona back in the day. 1 year, Arizona beat Virginia in the tournament back in the late 80s, beat a Terry Holland team in the tournament. Stoudemire, so that's an interesting hire. They went pretty quick. They didn't wait till the meat market at the Final Four. They went ahead and got Stoudemire. He had been at Pacific as a college coach, head coach, and then I think most recently he was back in the NBA. He was back in Boston with the Boston Celtics this year, and so still a couple of ACC jobs open. Syracuse filled their job, didn't they? Notre Dame has a job open. Right. A couple high-profile jobs. Georgetown and St. John's are open. So, it's the coaching carousel. This is that time of year.
Yeah, and that one of those teams too that we were talking about that you mentioned right there. We were talking about, I think, the Sampson kid that's the assistant, the son. I think he's up for possibly a job at St. John's. I think they're looking at him at St. John's. They're looking at that. But I had something I was thinking about just then I know what it was. Yeah, Jerry Stackhouse. That's probably the reason why they got Stoudemire so quick and stuff, is because Jerry Stackhouse has done such a great job at Vanderbilt. Yeah. He pulled off what a lot of people thought was going to be just impossible to do, and he's pulled that off. And then at the same time, who are we talking about? We're talking about what's his name, Hardaway.
Penny Hardaway's at Memphis, yeah,
at Memphis, and he pulls off a final 64 or a 64 team field bid, and I'm just like, wow, I can't believe that. But
one of these young NBA guys are doing pretty well, aren't they?
Yeah. It really shows that. But one other thing I was surprised about, but then again, I wasn't, and it'd be the final thing I'll mention about basketball. I'm glad that Coach Mox decided not to accept the invitation to go to the NIT or that women's basketball part of the NIT, because she knew well they're depleted right now. I mean, they've played their heart out and stuff all season, and they just weren't ready. And I think she did a heck of a job by making that call. And I think it was a great thing on her to make the women's NIT, especially to make that in her first year.
Yeah, they only won 5 games last year under Tina Thompson and won 15 and this year under Coach Mox, and could have won a lot more. You mentioned the injuries. They played their last couple of games with 6 healthy players.
Yeah.
That is, and they beat one of the teams. I think it was maybe NC State. They beat with 6 players.
NC State. Team. Yeah. So, NC State.
Yeah. Credit to her. And it's an honor just to have gotten the invitation, but there's no way they could play with 6 players. That's just asking a lot. So
it would
I was going to ask you one more thing about basketball before I let you go, because it's sort of down your neck of the woods. So we mentioned 2 open jobs, Georgetown and St. John's. Both schools are reportedly interested in a guy named Rick Pitino.
I
thought I'd get that reaction out of you.
I'm kind of that same way. I don't know. Rick Pitino is like kryptonite to Superman. I mean, I don't know why when I hear that name, it scares me. It really does scare me. And you go across the state line, you go into Kentucky, Pitino's name is mud. They hate him. They would rather honestly, if they could go and they could put it together, they would be happy if Virginia got him in the Department of Corrections coaching a Red Onion basketball team. That's what they would be wanting more than anything. They hate him so bad in Kentucky. And, of course, they hate Louisville, but they didn't have to worry much about Louisville this year. But Rick Pitino, again, it's just like
he's 70 years old and he's up for these 2 jobs. I can't fathom it myself, but
yeah, St. John's is the one I know that he's under. He was under consideration for with that one, but oh my, I have dreams. I have dreams about Pitino coaching again at a major level, and I start thinking, oh my gosh, it's like watching a sequel to The Godfather or something. What's going to happen? They're going to be bringing in all of this stuff, and you get your your escorts, or so to speak, is what they had supposedly at. And Tennessee even got in on the action when they had their coach down there, and they had Lane Kiffin had escorts. Supposedly they go out and they meet the guys at the football games and so forth. But Pitino scares me. I really wish somebody would just say, Rick, it's okay. You just go on, just coach at Iona, just be happy with yourself, and just be glad that somebody still loves you there, and stuff, because you're going to St. John's. If you go to that job, you're in a rough spot. You're in a rough spot, especially in New York with St. John's, because very, very fickle crowds there too. So, hey, what was his name that played for him at one time and stuff? He coached for him at one time. Made it in the NBA. Chris, what's the guy's name I'm thinking of?
Coached for him and played in the NBA. I'm at a loss too. I'm
trying to think of who it was. Chris, I'm wanting to say. Chris is the first name that comes out.
Okay.
I can't think of his last name, but he found it hard. He found it. Chris Mullins. That's who it is.
Chris Mullins at St. John's. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Here I am forgetting my own namesake without the S on the end of it. And I mean, here he is. And lo and behold, he goes up there, tries to coach a little while and stuff. He doesn't bring the fire back whatsoever. So,
well, both those jobs, the St. John's and Georgetown, they hired legends, Chris Mullin and Patrick Ewing, and both flamed out. So,
well, I knew something was wrong at Georgetown when Mac McClung left. Yeah, I mean, that clearly told me that something was going on there. And, I just couldn't understand. He's got talent. Why couldn't they go, and why couldn't they put away some of these games? And then when McClung went to Texas Tech, well, we know what happened there and so forth. He stayed there for a little bit, and then he went to the NBA. But, I kind of had the feeling about Patrick Ewing that he wasn't exactly running a very tight ship or a very well-run program at Georgetown. And when they said goodbye to him, I was kind of expecting that. If they were expecting John Thompson, the second coming out of Patrick Ewing, they were going to be sadly disappointed with it.
You know, Mike Bray's also up for that job at Georgetown. At least he's been reportedly linked to that job. I bring Mike Bray's name up because his last game at Notre Dame was the loss to Virginia Tech in the ACC tournament last week. That was Tuesday. After the game, Scott German, my colleague, was hungry still. There were no more pizza places open in Greensboro after 12 o'clock. So Scott headed over to the Waffle House and ran into Mike Bray.
Oh my gosh, did he?
He ran into Mike Bray at the Waffle House. Mike Bray was holding court at the Waffle House. He was for about an hour there. He was apparently the king of the Waffle House. So there's your real life guy right there. I don't know that anybody could picture Mike Bray, Catholic guy. That's why he's linked to the Georgetown job. Slick suits, slick back hair, and everything else. He's at Waffle House just like the rest of us are sometimes.
Well, that's like my niece that lives in Charlottesville. She's in Harris Teeter one day and she comes down the aisle and there's Tony Bennett. She says, "What do I say to Tony Bennett?" And she said, "I know that my uncle is going to be kicking me right now because I didn't speak to Tony Bennett." And I'm like, "Hey, I didn't feel that way. I mean, look who came into Zenberger the night we were there."
Oh yeah, the whole basketball team pretty much.
The whole basketball team and Salt got there. I think Jerome was even in there and stuff.
I believe was there. You feel certain guys when they walk up behind you.
And you want to get up and stuff, and you want to get up and say, "Hey, how you doing?" Stuff like that. But they were busy with somebody else, and it's just act like nothing's going on. Don't act like it's a big deal and stuff. But now Bray in a Waffle House,
Bray in a Waffle
House. That is something to there should be a story there that Scott should come up with about the Waffle House and Mike Bray and stuff, because a Waffle House is a Southern institution. There's no doubt about it. Here he is, and he's going to that, and he's going in there. Of course, I mean, hey, he's going to be treated like royalty if he goes into Waffle House, especially like that. I mean, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. did the same thing after he won the race. He won Daytona. He went into the Waffle House, took his trophy in and everything into the Waffle House. So the Waffle House must be the happening place.
It must be. They ought to use that in their advertising. It's where people go after they win. Or in Mike Bray's case, he was just celebrating the end of his career at Notre Dame. But I don't know how many Waffle Houses are up there in D.C. if he gets a Georgetown job, but he might find out.
Yeah, I know. We've got several down here, and a lot of them. I think the majority of what we have are huddle houses down here is what we've got. But you move out a little bit further and out of from where we're at, and then you've got Waffle Houses. And Waffle Houses, I hate to say it, they have a bad reputation for a lot of things happening either in the parking lot or inside there. Somebody doesn't come to work, somebody throws a dish at somebody because, hey, I'm trying to cook back here. And, these people are going to have to wait and stuff. I mean, it happened to us at a huddle house in Pigeon Forge. I mean, scary experience. And this is like 11 o'clock at night. And you think, oh, shouldn't be that much of a crowd, but I guess they dropped everything for Mike Bray and they just did everything for him. And everybody else was just kind of like dumbstruck and looking, hey, Notre Dame basketball coach, he's here.
I've been in plenty of Waffle Houses after midnight, and they're never not busy after midnight. I
know they're never not busy.
I don't know how that is, but they're never not busy. Hey, so if there's any movement on Rick Pitino, you'll hear that here, of course, and we'll talk NASCAR next week as well.
Yeah.
Hey, Rod, thanks for your time and your insight.
No problem, Chris. Thanks.